Thanks for joining us for Broken Promises, a KARE 11 Investigates special report. I'm AJ Lagoe. This investigation exposes the Department of Veterans Affairs repeatedly failing to do right by veterans suffering from the signature wound in the War on Terror. And it also raises serious questions about a doctor entrusted with caring for the men and women who put on our nation's uniform.
Some things can't be cleaned away. Memories, passing decades, don't dim.
There's been days where I put my dress blues on, my uniform, and I've had a gun in my mouth and came so close to pulling the trigger.
For Brandon Winishek, infantryman and scout swimmer in the 2nd Battalion, 4th Marines, the war-torn streets of Ramadi, Iraq are ever present.
To me, it feels like it happened yesterday. I'll never forget what happened.
34 of his fellow Marines were killed during the 7-month deployment. Hundreds more were wounded. It left him filled with questions for which there are no answers.
Why did my best friends die and I didn't? Why did this person die and I didn't?
Close calls? There were plenty. A bomb brought down part of this building he was in.
Next thing you know, boom. And I had been thrown, across the room. I remember seeing stars, and then just confusion.
Brandon survived 3 other IED explosions, but came home without a visible scratch.
There were a lot of Marines that came back with no legs, no arms, no eyes, or they were killed.
You came back changed.
I did.
The physical and mental effects of what the VA attributed solely to post-traumatic stress seemed unshakable.
I was struggling to, not kill myself.
In 2012, Brandon, now a police officer, wondered if he might also be suffering from the signature wound of the War on Terror, a traumatic brain injury known as a TBI. He turned to the Minneapolis VA. Records show Brandon's TBI diagnosis was done at the Compensation and Pension Clinic. The doctor wrote, "I cannot find any residual cognitive deficits." Brandon received this letter stating service connection for TBI is denied.
What Brandon didn't know is he'd been seen by a doctor who, by the VA's own rules, was not qualified to diagnose TBI. Part of a nationwide scandal first exposed back in 2015 by a KARE 11 investigation.
There was a tenacious young journalist named AJ Lagoe who did some really fantastic journalism, some really fair reporting and work at the Minneapolis VA.
There were congressional hearings and inspector general probes as KARE 11's invisible wounds investigation uncovered VA violating its own policy that only 4 types of highly trained specialists are allowed to diagnose whether a veteran has traumatic brain injury.
Carball.
KARE 11 discovered veteran
I got all blue to hell.
after veteran denied care and benefits
So I was sitting right there.
because they were misdiagnosed by an unqualified VA doctor.
It's a big thing to sit and wonder in your head, am I nuts?
Finally, in 2016, the VA promised to make right the injustice, recalling nearly 25,000 veterans for new TBI exams, this time promising qualified doctors, and if impacted veterans filed within a year, they'd get what was labeled equitable relief, benefits backdated to when they first applied.
We're going through it with a fine-tooth comb nationally to make sure we get all those veterans in and we get them what they deserve. We will get it solved. That's all what's important, AJ. We'll get it solved.
But our new investigation raises serious questions about whether VA truly fulfilled that promise to all the impacted veterans, or in some cases, just moved on from unqualified doctors to inadequate exams and continued denial of care and benefits.
It took me finding your story.
Brandon was one of the nearly 25,000 veterans who had seen an unqualified doctor and needed a new TBI exam. He was instructed to go here, to the Tomah, Wisconsin VA.
And I see Mary Jo Lanska, who was Tomah VA's comp and pen doctor.
Brandon says the exam with Dr. Lanska lasted just half an hour.
How can somebody diagnose traumatic brain injury in 30 minutes? It's impossible.
Records confirm VA neurologist Mary Jo Lanska did no neuropsych testing. In fact, the only testing she gave Brandon was an MMSE. It stands for Mini Mental State Exam. Here's an example on YouTube of the type of simple questions asked in the 5 to 10 minute test.
What is today's year?
2015.
In Brandon's case, this second TBI exam proved to be a case of deja vu.
And once again, I was, denied TBI. I was told I did not have a traumatic brain injury.
No TBI diagnosis meant Brandon received no treatment. As years passed, he had to quit his job as a police officer. He now manages a homeless shelter for veterans. But irritability, sudden mood changes, and unexplained physical symptoms strained his marriage to wife Josie.
Yeah.
Brandon continued to ask the VA for further TBI testing and continued to be denied.
So the VA's telling me I'm fine, but clearly I'm not. I struggle with not killing myself.
I didn't know what to do. Nobody's prepped as a spouse for how to handle that.
In March of 2021, he asked for a consult to go outside the VA for private TBI testing, but he needed approval from Toma VA Neurology.
But guess who's in charge of Toma VA Neurology? The same doctor that conducted the 2015 examination. And her name is Mary Jo Lanska. And Dr. Lanska writes me a letter.
The letter states Dr. Mary Jo Lanska declined the consult because her previous screening in 2015 found you do not have a TBI.
Toma VA turned me down, told me to kick rocks.
Desperate for answers, Brandon went out of pocket to Gunderson Health, where doctors said the VA's screening test, that MMSE, was totally inadequate.
It's not meant to be a diagnostic tool. It's not sensitive or specific for traumatic brain injury.
Dr. Justin Otis is a neuropsychiatrist at Gunderson Health in Wisconsin. He says the MMSE is typically used to spot dementia in elderly patients.
Are these brief screening tools adequate to diagnose traumatic brain injury?
They are not. Those types of assessments are not particularly useful in these cases.
So, Brandon spent weeks going through a barrage of imaging and testing with multiple specialists, each pointing to the same diagnosis.
Does Brandon have a TBI?
Yes. Brandon sustained multiple mild traumatic brain injuries through his military career and has deficits that are, I believe, to be permanent.
I needed that high quality examination that the VA promised to give me and never did.
The VA was forced to backtrack and finally acknowledge Brandon has a TBI. After a decade of rejection, he's finally getting treatment for the brain injuries he received in service to his country.
It's maddening to know that there were all these steps that could have been taken as preventative measures and as actual care for him that were missed for 10 years.
Coming up, the Department of Veterans Affairs still had one final act of denial.
They're now refusing to give you that equitable relief that the VA secretary promised?
They are refusing.
Broken Promises continues after the break. To care for him who shall have borne the battle. A motto our investigation found the federal agency not living up to.
The VA kicked me to the curb.
The VA repeatedly misdiagnosed United States Marine and Iraq War veteran Brandon Winishek, telling him he did not have a traumatic brain injury. After he paid for private medical testing that proved otherwise, VA then denied his request for equitable relief. The backdated benefits they promised veterans with brain injuries previously misdiagnosed.
They are refusing.
When KARE 11 asked VA why Brandon was denied equitable relief benefits, their response was, no request was received from the veteran within the year timeframe. VA claiming the logic-defying excuse that Brandon didn't file within 1 year of his 2015 re-examination. Remember, that's the time he spent 30 minutes at the Toma VA, was given an inadequate test, again misdiagnosed, and told he did not have a TBI.
If I'm told twice that I don't have a TBI, then why would I go file for TBI if the VA told me twice that I was fine?
Members of Congress now weighing in, demanding answers. U.S. Senators Tammy Baldwin of Wisconsin and Tammy Duckworth of Illinois fired off this letter to VA Secretary and Minnesota native Dennis McDonough to follow up on reports of misdiagnosed traumatic brain injuries. The senators also wrote, "We are worried that the process for receiving equitable relief may have been overly complicated, too limited in scope, and placed too much of the burden on veterans to navigate the process in a timely manner or miss out on benefits that they are owed."
The Department of Veterans Affairs then tried to Jedi mind trick the senators.
VA Assistant Secretary Patricia Ross responded, VA has not denied veterans equitable relief due solely to missing the 1-year deadline. Brandon's case proves that's not true. Here's the denial letter he got to his request for equitable relief. The only reason stated for his denial is VA did not receive his TBI claim within the 1-year time frame.
And to get constantly denied, that's what is most upsetting. That's why veterans kill themselves. You know, my story is the perfect example.
Trying to cut through the VA's fog of misinformation, our investigation continued. We discovered a pattern of veterans like Brandon denied care and benefits after seeing the same VA doctor.
And the story needs to be told.
Broken Promises continues after the break. The pictures on our walls often reveal the life accomplishments of which we're most proud.
Yes.
For Abby Siakper, it's the same, with the uniform she put on as she sat down to share her story.
And I wear my uniform today because I'm proud of my service and I'm proud of what I did. And the story needs to be told.
Abby's story includes service in the Illinois Army National Guard. She flew Black Hawks. She was a gay woman in the military before the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And now she's in a fight with the Department of Veterans Affairs.
It messes with your self-worth. When you work so hard over and over and over to prove yourself, just to be denied by an organization that you went to for help.
Her records document a line of duty head injury.
Hitting my head on the ground and knocked unconscious.
Years later, after she took off her uniform, while working as a civilian on a military base, she took another brain blow, falling off the wing of a plane.
Basically landed spread eagle on my back and hit my head first on the tarmac.
She began seeing a private neurologist at Gunderson Health because within weeks, she developed strange tic-like movements in her hands and feet, delayed speech, and cognitive functioning.
She diagnosed me with functional movement disorder, which basically means that due to multiple head injuries, my brain had kind of reached its max.
Abby's doctor wrote in her assessment, I suspect this latest head injury was the straw that broke the camel's back. And of Abby's symptoms, she wrote, she has no control over them. Wanting a second opinion about the best course of treatment, Abby turned to the Toma VA.
I wanted to have an opinion from a military perspective. And since I was close to Toma VA, that's where I sought care.
But here at Toma, instead of care, she says she got insults. And it's in writing. Remember Dr. Mary Jo Lanska, who misdiagnosed Brandon Winishek's TBI and refused to even write him a referral to get outside care? Records show The same doctor just reviewed Abby's chart and records. Never even saw her, but put this note in Abby's file about people with functional movement disorder having common underlying agendas that include avoidance of work and monetary gain.
It accused me of malingering, which is faking my symptoms.
What was the result of that being in your record?
I have been denied disability benefits.
Sure enough, when she later applied for disability benefits, she got this denial letter. It states her disorder is possibly for secondary gain per Toma VA Neurology.
It's an attack on your character, on your soul, on your whole being. You know, you can't see the damage on my brain. You can't see the depression and the anxiety. That doesn't mean that I'm faking. I've never faked anything. Nobody goes into the military to fake things. You can't fake this.
Abby's private neurologist sent the VA a scathing letter writing, "The VA needs to seriously review their understanding of this very common disorder because it dooms these individuals to prolonged disability and denial of much needed and deserved care." Abby asked Toma to have the disparaging note removed from her medical records. They sent this letter saying they did a thorough review and her request is denied.
Who did that review?
Dr. Lanska.
You heard right. Toma VA had Dr. Lanska review herself. It's in writing. Dr. MJ Lanska conducted the review.
It's a slap in the face. It's a slap in the face.
Still ahead, it's not just veterans with brain injuries we found being misdiagnosed.
Put it on the report that I didn't even have MS.
Broken Promises continues after the break.
Well, I got my stock car back in the back here.
Kelvin Catone keeps the car as a reminder of days before the debilitating effects of multiple sclerosis robbed him of his ability to drive.
Just sit here and look at it, thinking about the past a lot.
The past includes service to country, tours in both the Marines and Army, and a fight, a battle with a government agency that's supposed to have his back, but instead, he says, stabbed him in it.
So they were taking away all of your benefits?
Yeah.
Kel's story is an all too familiar story for other veterans who've turned here to the Toma, Wisconsin VA for help. A KARE 11 investigation found a pattern of veterans misdiagnosed.
Put it on the report that I didn't even have MS.
Made to feel they're faking.
You can't fake this.
Wrongly denied medical care and benefits.
Toma VA turned me down, told me to kick rocks.
Brandon Winishek, Abby Siakper, and Kelvin Catone all have documented and diagnosed neurological disabilities related to their service, and all had their care and benefits torpedoed by the same Toma VA neurologist.
And her name is Mary Jo Lanska.
Dr. Lanska.
Dr. Mary Jo Lanska.
The Toma VA repeatedly refused KARE 11's multiple requests to interview Dr. Mary Jo Lanska and hospital leadership. They refused to answer any questions at all, just sending a statement that says they are aware of concerns.
Oh, there it is, right there.
Kelvin's wife, Janice, who, oh, by the way, worked at the Toma VA as a nursing assistant for 37 years, keeps meticulous records.
You got to have proof that what was said.
They show Kelvin's been diagnosed with MS and treated by his private doctors for MS for years.
So you were getting seen in the Gunderson MS clinic?
Yes.
For
the MS.
In 2013, the Toma VA itself documented he had multiple sclerosis connected to his service. His 30% disability benefits came to about $450 a month.
That bought groceries on the table.
By 2016, Kelvin's symptoms were getting worse.
It's falling a lot more.
More fatigue and stuff like that.
His private doctors suggested he ask Toma VA to be reevaluated for a possible benefits increase. He saw Dr. Lanska.
How long did you spend with Dr. Lanska?
Probably 30 minutes.
Records show, after that brief exam, Dr. Lanska claimed Cale's MS has been diagnosed in error.
You went ahead and go like this to his nose and this and walk, and that's how you determined he had MS or not?
Because of that, the VA cut all his benefits, sending him this letter. Service connection for multiple sclerosis is severed.
What is going through y'all's head when you see this?
I wasn't too pleased.
You know, your heart drops when you get that letter and open it up and saying not only are you not getting more, you're just being discontinued from the whole VA system.
Because he no longer had a service-connected disability, VA was also no longer helping pay for his medication.
Your jaw had to hit the floor.
Oh, jaw, stomach, everything. Yeah. It was just like, oh my gosh, you know, we're told by our doctors to try to, you know, go and get his percentage up because he is worse. And it is, you know, service related. And then you just lose everything.
After Dr. Lanska ruled Kelvin didn't have MS, he was forced to undergo a painful spinal tap just to prove he had it, and there is no question about this. The VA had to do an about-face, increasing his benefits to 100%. The benefits they'd stripped because of Dr. Lanska's misdiagnosis.
Yeah.
What the Catones didn't know at the time is they were not the only veteran family denied care and benefits after seeing the Toma VA neurologist. U.S. Senator Tammy Baldwin of Wisconsin's office received so many complaints, she wrote this letter to VA Secretary Dennis McDonough requesting a comprehensive investigation into the practices of Dr. Mary Lanska at Toma VA Medical Center.
We don't know yet what the results of that official investigation will find. This much seems clear. Nearly a decade ago, we exposed a nationwide scandal, the VA using unqualified doctors to diagnose veterans. Now, these new cases raise serious questions about whether the VA has simply replaced unqualified doctors with inadequate exams, yielding the same troubling results. On behalf of the KARE 11 investigative team, thanks for watching Broken Promises.